Good old
How you
Ned.
doing, man? You good?
I'm cool. I'm just trying to think of like Game of Thrones, and they messy, bro. That is this messy.
Yeah, it's this chapter I really like because it's really starting to get into like the nitty gritty of like a lot of like the details and like the things around the edges. But
Yeah.
I'm excited to get into it. Well, welcome back, folks. Welcome back to another episode of New Block Nerds podcast. I'm your host Chris, aka Prince, with the homie Duran, aka Medic Grizzly, and we are back with another episode of Tuesday Thrones. We were doing Daenerys last week. We are back in Westeros in the north with Ned Stark. Duran, I want to throw it to you first because there's a lot of detail in this chapter that we talked a little bit off air about that they didn't give a whole lot of exposition in the show around this part. So what was your reaction to kind of seeing some of the ins and outs, some of the details here between like Ned and King Robert?
So just being boys, being friends, get up, let's go for a ride. Like that's how I start the energy. I'm like, all right, cool, cool, we're gonna do our thing. And then you just see the King Robert just take off. Like just go off into this giant, just go and go and go. And Ned's like, okay, I gotta catch up because maybe he wants to tell me something. And then you just see them just freely, just I guess King Robert being what he always wanted to be, just free. And then eventually get to a point where they actually can talk when there's no ears really around. And it gets dark, bro. The conversation gets dark
Yeah, it
because it
gets
went
started
from
quick.
yeah, like you thinking this in your head, picture them just riding, being like young lads, having a great time. To yo, I got word of a spy of Daenerys' wedding. I don't like it. She has to go. She's a Targaryen. And it brings back the rich history, muddy, but rich history
Very
of
muddy.
why he is King Robert. So tell the folks, break it down on why he wants her dead so bad.
Okay, so there's a lot of exposition in here, and again, the way that it's written, it doesn't feel like exposition. Like you're getting a lot of history, but it's applied in a way that is organic, just like to
Mm-hmm.
the conversation that they're having. So Ned starts to have all these inner thoughts of all of these things coming back that happened in the war just 15, 16 years ago. So Robert is telling Ned about Varys getting word from a writer or from Ser Jorah, which we know Ser Jorah Mormont is a northerner in Daenerys' camp right now, giving the news that Daenerys and Khal Drogo have just been married, which we just covered in the last chapter. So Robert doesn't like it because he hates all Targaryens. Obviously,
Mm-hmm.
we kind of covered this a little bit, but 15, 16 years ago, Robert led a rebellion to overthrow the Targaryens. And the climax of that rebellion was the Lannisters, which is Robert's wife, her family. They stayed out of the fighting for the duration of the war until the end of the war. The
Mm-hmm.
Mad King was held up in King's Landing in the Red Keep, and Tywin Lannister arrives with they mentioned 15,000 or so soldiers. Like a fool, the Mad King opens the gates and Tywin sacks the city. It
Yes.
ends with the Mad King being killed by Sir Jaime Lannister and Rhaegar's wife and kids murdered by Lannister men.
Mm-hmm.
And when they got to King's Landing, Lord Tywin presented the bodies of Rhaegar's family to King Robert as a token of fealty.
Yes.
One could say that act of quote unquote loyalty is what got Cersei the nod to become Robert's queen in the first place.
Absolutely. That whole thing was planned.
So it's and there's a lot of history about why the Lannisters stayed out of the war, which we'll get into in further chapters. I don't want to get into it now. Um, but obviously Ned and Robert they have different views on how the end of the war was conducted. Ned called it murder. Robert said, "Hey, that's just part of war." And Ned has a little bit of an inner monologue where he's talking about how him and Robert really didn't speak after that because they were just so on polar opposites on that issue. It wasn't until Ned goes down to the Tower of Joy and recovers Lyanna's body, that they kind of reconcile with each other and kind of reconnected over their grief over Lyanna's passing. So there's a lot in there. There's a lot in there.
Yes. Can we
But
talk
you
about
kind of
how?
go ahead.
Can we talk about how, like you said, Jamie sat on a throne, and
Right. Yeah.
how that
So
right there rubbed Ned wrong because you don't do that. If it was supposedly be like, "Hey, I came in. This is my tribute to the king, King Robert," you don't sit on a throne.
right. And it was interesting because Jamie knew that he shouldn't have been up there, because
Mm-hmm.
when Ned recounts the story in his brain, he talks about how he rode the length of the hall and just stared at Jamie. Didn't say anything to him. And then finally Jamie just laughed it off and just like, "Hey, look, don't worry about it. I'm just keeping it warm for Robert." So Jamie knew he had no business actually sitting on the
Absolutely.
chair itself, right? So that's where I think Ned really, aside from the obvious, Jamie was a sworn brother of the Kingsguard, still is,
Mm-hmm.
and he killed his king. That is like the ultimate taboo,
Betrayal, everything.
right?
Yeah.
And I get it. Him and Robert kind of go back and forth. Where Robert's like, "Well, someone had to kill Eris. If it wasn't Jamie, it would have fell to you or me." And he was just like, "Well, we're not Knights of the Kingsguard." But I think what really set Ned off, aside from the family killings and everything like that, was just the brazenness and just the complete disregard for just basic kind of knightly conduct by Jamie, right? You just killed the man that you swore to protect.
Mm-hmm.
The least you can do is show some fucking shame about it, even if it was justified. Even if it
At
was
all.
justified, show some shame. The fact that you killed him and then you went up there and you sat on the throne like it was yours really
Yes.
sent Ned over the edge, right? And I kind of get that,
Mm-hmm.
but at the same time, and this is why the story is so great, because you have all these different characters with differing views on a bunch of stuff. But I also understand Jamie's point of view too when he's talking about, and we'll get into this later, about why he killed the Mad King and why he had to die. Okay, two things can be true.
Yeah, I get that, and like the reason why I want to bring it back up about Jamie sitting on there because like now Jamie also brings attention. Oh, when Jamie's now at the North and how the whole vibe, like these people have a past, and the past was happening in the war when they were young, and they see Jamie. You are still wearing the Knight's Guard, like King's Guard. You are still wearing the suit that you vowed to protect the king while slaying the king, and then King Robert is supposed to believe and they, hey, that was just one time thing. It's no problem. Ned's like, no, like they have like everything they're doing is chess moves. And then we go into the fact of talking about the East and explain to the people how important it is about having the power of territories and why
Right.
it's so
So
valuable.
that's a great point you bring up. So obviously these great houses, they want to continue to consolidate power, right? So in Westeros there are four wardens: Warden of the North, West, South, and East, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, right now the Warden of the East is typically held by the Lord of the Vale. That was Jon Arryn. Jon Arryn is dead now. His child is like 6. I think Robert Arryn is like, they call him Sweet Robin. He's like 6, but he's very sickly. It's
Mm-hmm.
not it's not a good look, and Robert makes this point. It's not really a good look if things might be a little rocky in the future to have a child as Warden of the East. And so Ned kind of suspects that the Lannisters are trying to kind of shimmy their way into more power here.
Mm-hmm.
And he's right, because Robert has named Sir Jamie Warden of the East. Lord
Which
Tywin
is
is Warden of the West.
that's a huge, huge thing.
And another Lannister is Queen. So they have a lot of power here, right?
Mm-hmm.
And Ned doesn't like that. One, because of course the note they got from Lysa. Two, because of how he already feels about Jamie. Um, and it's weird that Robert talks about, basically brushes off Jamie's like loyalty or lack thereof, because he talks to Ned about his fear of Daenerys marrying a Dothraki,
Mm-hmm.
and saying if they were to come over with the Dothraki horde, the people who those houses who fought on the Targaryen side, they would turn on me in an instant. Like he thinks, and he says it. He said they would kill me in my sleep the first
Mm-hmm.
chance they get if they thought that they could seat Viserys back on the throne.
And which
But
some
then,
fans
but
may
then,
know about it.
right? But then on the same hand, just totally dismisses the Lannisters and all their known and documented treachery.
It's almost as if like I know he almost believes that hey, that's my wife and her family. They're not going to slay me as fast as people who actually truly believe that he is not the king, that the Targaryens are the king. And if they were to have a sense of another Targaryen coming, they're going to go and flock to where they want to go to, which I understand is logic to it, in which he's so scared of it that he wants every Targaryen gone. But you are literally sleeping with the enemy. They waited. They waited. They're playing a game of chess the entire time. This is really messy. And King Robert knows it. He knows it. That's why he
Yeah,
wanted to ride off again. He was trying to avoid it because he knew that Ned is like he's asking questions that make sense. Like logistically, like it doesn't make sense to give them that much power and you're supposed to be the king. You're surrounding yourself with giving them the throne.
yeah, and and to that point, like Ned even suggests one of Robert's brothers, and that's another piece of exposition that we get about Stannis, but not just Stannis, but Renly as well too.
Mm-hmm.
Why didn't Robert name one of his brothers as Warden of the East? We know Stannis is at this point he's a renowned commander. We know
Yes.
that. I mean, he helped put down the Greyjoy Rebellion, which we already know about, and he held Storm's End during Robert's Rebellion. He's a good commander, but
Mm-hmm.
again, that's a little bit more info about how Robert feels about his brothers. Robert hates his
Yes.
brothers. He does. I wouldn't. Maybe he doesn't hate them, but he's indifferent about them, right?
He trusts the Lancers more than he trusts his own family. That's
Right.
crazy.
Which is foreshadowing for how the Baratheons end up handling things later on in the story.
Mm-hmm.
But we'll get to that later. But um, there's also a little bit of info earlier on in this chapter when they first start talking about them riding off together as just like two knights, and Robert's questioning Ned about the mother of John. And I
He
love
said
when
that.
I
Push
always
me
love
down.
when people ask Ned about John's mom, because he gives them absolutely nothing. Not even the king.
Bro,
Not
it
even the
don't matter
king.
who you
Doesn't
are.
matter who it is. He's not giving you
No.
anything.
And he gets straight stone back from first chapter saying how the presence of who, like, Eddard has a presence about him, an aura that, like, when they go straight stone cold in the north, you guys will know, don't talk to me. I'm going to give you straight Undertaker eyes. All right. Giving King Robert's like, you know what? All right, cool. You don't want to
I'll
talk
leave it
about it.
alone. Yeah,
You gotta
yeah.
leave it alone. This is the king. And he's
Mm-hmm.
like, he's serious, bro. I'm not checking that man about this. I let it lie. I'm not going to mess with you. Go ahead.
Yeah, and it's so good because Ned, he's just so line in the sand about it. He's just like,
Yes.
nope, not going to talk about her. Here's her name. That's it. That's all you get. I'd rather not talk about it. And Robert's like, all right, well, fine. If you don't want to talk about it, that's fine. Whatever. I didn't call you out here to talk about your bastard's mother anyway. And that's of
Yeah.
course when they start getting into Daenerys getting married and everything like that. But yeah, I mean, it's again, they're two friends. I don't think that would fly if him and Robert weren't such great friends
Mm-hmm.
together. But I mean, you see Ned start to act like towards the end of the chapter, really start to question himself about like why
Yes.
he's doing this. He's always had these questions, but he's like, look, I know Robert's going to do what he's going to do.
Mm-hmm.
The council be damned. I don't know what I'm doing here, but I know I don't have a choice, and
Yes.
it is what it is.
He said towards the end, he's like, no matter what I do, like he's going to do what he wants to do. Like you said, I try to be wise. Speaking of his mentor before, he tried to give him wisdom. It didn't work. No matter what you say is not going to happen. And he's
Nope.
realizing that I am walking into a situation where I belong in the North. I belong with my son. I belong with my wife. But I'm going down here to deal with all this stuff. Like, he is such a straight and narrow person. This backdooring things the Lannisters do, and how King Robert doesn't really pay attention. All he wants to do is like a little kid having fun. That's not a place you put a grown man in, because what's going to happen is he's going to want to draw that line in the sand. And if you guys don't, either on my side or this side, and then problems happen, which is exactly what's going to happen.
Yep. And I think, and Robert talks about it too. He was never really fit for this role. Robert wasn't. Like, he was never, like you said, he was like, the talking about how the gods have basically kind of played a joke on him.
Mm-hmm.
It was Lyanna he wanted, not a crown. He was like, what's the point of having this crown? Like, the only thing I ever wanted was her, and she's gone, and I can't bring her back. You know what I mean? So he's not there to rule. He's not there. He's very ill-equipped to handle this. And then you throw Ned Stark in here, who is, like you said, is a very straight liner, going down into, a garden of thieves and spies and backstabbers. It's doesn't end well.
It just tells you how, like, his character design, like the depth of the origin, how we got that first. It explains why Eddard's who he is. And then you see everything else, like, yeah, he only belongs up there. He doesn't belong anywhere else.
Yeah.
And then, like, taking that character out and put him in a different kind of element, you're just asking for disaster. I'm looking forward to seeing what's going to happen next. We know some of it because of the TV shows, but these books are giving details that I did not know about, and it's really cool.
Yeah, no, I'm glad that we're going through these, because, like, again, a chapter like this gives you so much more than just the discussion they had, on the TV show. And you kind of see, before we get out of here, like, you kind of see Ned's kind of distaste for just outright murder. Robert wants to kill Daenerys, and Ned's like, that's unspeakable, what you're saying. Even, of course Robert gets mad and is talking about all the things Targaryens did to them, and but
we can go back to the original when he explained to Bran on why he was doing the execution, and explaining, do you know why? Like, there's a code of conduct for him, and you have to know why you're doing it. Just going and killing somebody for no reason, like you said, it doesn't sit well with him at all.
Right. Especially not in that way, not sending assassins. Like, if he's going to kill someone, he's going to go to them, just like he said in this chapter. He went to Bear Island to go execute Ser Jorah for essentially practicing slavery in the North, which is outlawed. He went there himself. He made the long trek all the way out to Bear Island himself. That's just who he is. And yeah, I get it. In the grand scheme of things, in this Game of Thrones that they play, maybe that way of thinking is outdated, and it's stupid, and it's dangerous, and can ultimately get you killed. I'm with you. But man's got to have a code.
And then, hey, I'm looking forward to it, bro. This is a great. Thank you.
Yeah. Well, guys, let us know what you guys thought about the chapter. Don't forget to like, subscribe, comment, share with your friends. We are doing, I think, Tyrion next week.
Yeah, my guy.
Tyrion next week is back up again, and he's continuing his trek up to the wall. So, always looking forward to a Tyrion chapter. Duran, it's been a pleasure as always, bro. And we will catch you guys on the next one.